While we sleep, the guardians of the night take to the streets, having said goodbye to those they love. Each other knowing they may never say these words again, they face the evil that we run from. They dedicate their lives to those that would hate them because they wear the badge. They wear the badge not for the glory or recognition, but because they were born to honor the thin blue line. This is the LEO First Podcast. We'll talk to the men and women in law enforcement, those that have retired, and anyone who's impacted by law enforcement. We'll peel back the curtain, and you'll get the real stories. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Every law enforcement officer has a story to tell. Get ready to hear from the men and women who put their lives on the line every day for their communities and their country. Welcome to the LEO First Podcast. Now, here's your host, Michael Laidler.
Hey, everybody. It's Michael Laidler, your host of the LEO First Podcast, and I'm excited. It's July right now, and given some of the things I've been having going on with my life, I know that I can actually release this podcast in the month of July, so I'm extremely excited about that. And as being a speaker and a coach, whenever I get an opportunity to record a podcast, it's just another opportunity for me to spread the message of how important we are, especially in the law enforcement industry. And this episode we have today is going to be no different from that. I have the privilege and the opportunity to have on my podcast Kory Flowers. He is a 25-year veteran captain with the Greensboro PD. You may have heard his name before on other podcasts like Police One, Police Magazine, Los Angeles Times, the Southern Poverty Law Center, or even the National Public Radio. And if you haven't, he is a frequent guest on the Street Cop podcast. And this may be the first time that I can remember through all 50 to 60 episodes we have that we actually have someone that's been on TV. So if you've ever seen On Patrol Live, you may have seen him as well. So we're definitely excited to have him on. He's even a co-founder of a training and mentorship program called Run Well of young men. So he does have a lot going on. Obviously, as you're watching it, especially if you're watching on video, you'll see he's actually in uniform. So you could tell that he stays extremely busy. So Kory, I'm excited to have you on the episode. I'm excited to connect with you. I know we kind of started on LinkedIn at first, and we kind of got to this point. Most of my guests come from LinkedIn. Tell us about you. Tell us what you want the audience to know about you right out the gate.
Yeah, cool. Michael, I appreciate the invite, my man. I was telling you earlier, anybody in this world who has taken the time and the energy to cheerlead the profession of law enforcement, to bring attention to the fact that people wearing this shield are human beings, and to connect the world at large with our profession, like I greatly value it. So thanks for the invitation. Yeah, I've been a cop. So we're in Greensboro, North Carolina. So to orient folks, Greensboro is the third largest city in the state of North Carolina. I think we're the 60th largest police agency in the country. Wow. We've got about 700 sworn officers and then a lot of auxiliary folks also, maybe 1,200 or so in the agency. And I've been working here since the 1900s. I tell the kids in the academy that I started in 99. However, I get to say that. So, when I tell the young folks in the academy, like I was hanging out with yesterday, that I started in the 1900s, they're absolutely, bumfuzzled. And then I tell them, look, it's only 25 years, but it was definitely a different era. So I've done everything here in the agency that I've ever wanted to do. Which means my career has been extremely heavy on the tactical side of operations and on the intelligence side. Some things that I've never enjoyed have never held my attention. I've never done a lot of traffic enforcement. I've never written a seatbelt ticket. I've never done, crimes against kids type stuff because I know myself that'd be tough for me to manage. But I've spent a lot of years in the tactical space. So I was on our SWAT team for about 9 years. I ran our SWAT training program for the last 2 years. I ran our downtown bike squad as a sergeant for a couple of years. I ran our street crimes gang unit at night undercover for about 1.5 years. About 6 years in the middle of my career, I worked intelligence in conjunction with some of our federal partners. Specialized in white nationalism, white supremacist activity, as well as outlaw motorcycle gangs, primarily in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States, primarily east of the Mississippi River. So tracked and monitored the Klan, skinhead groups, outlaw biker gangs from, from effectively the middle of the country to the East Coast, which was a lot of fun. In about 2007, started focusing heavily on sovereign citizens, for instance, when that movement really
Yes,
exploded
I
after the
remember that.
recession of '08. My partner and I built the first sovereign citizen training program for cops that existed at that time. We've trained all manner of the FBI, the Secret Service, the marshals, as well as, actual city cops, street cops, sheriff's deputies, agents, troopers. At this point, from sea to shining sea, we've been training for 15 years or so on fringe criminal groups like those, trying to get some 101 basics to guys and gals on the street that'll run into these folks. Let's see what else. I've been a watch commander. I'm now a captain. I used to say I used to be a cop. Now I'm a captain, which is, it's just part of the evolution, right? So
Yeah,
now
it is.
I'm in charge today of one of our 4 patrol districts. So I've got 70-ish folks under my care here in Police District 2 in the south side of Greensboro. Historically the most violent part of the city, which is also the most enjoyable place to be a cop. This is where, the guys and gals here are doing the kind of police work that they make TV shows and movies about, right? They only make TV shows about cops and doctors. That's it. There's no TV shows about linoleum salesmen and real estate agents and everybody else. But I tell folks, you come to the south side here to District 2, you can police here, you can police anywhere in the country. And I just get to see these 20, 25, 30-year-olds doing valorous, heroic work all day, every day. Super noble, a lot of times underappreciated, but that's not what they signed up for. And I get to rub elbows with some of the best here, which is cool. Been married 20 years, which is super proud of that. I'm married to my beautiful redhead at home, and we have 3 kids. Our kids are 11, 13, and 15, and they're my, of course, pride and joy, and just killing it in their own aspects, which is a lot of fun. We were camping this weekend. We do it. We kind of run our household like you would in the '80s, honestly. Not a lot of electronic time, not a lot of folks on social media. We sweat a lot, we're outside a lot, we play a lot, we run pretty hard. We run off DVDs at home, so there you go. And
Do they still make those?
Yeah, my kids have bicycles. A lot of people have heard of these. They're 2-wheel, self-propelled, vehicles. They actually ride bikes and play in creeks, and so we run pretty hard, my man. But I value life. I got a small tribe of guys that I'm tight with here. We value a lot of the same things, like working out. Me and my pals are going to be working out every day. We're going to be reading all the time. We trade books and articles and clips and try to make ourselves better. And that's kind of what's important here. So that's my career in a nutshell. I've got about 3 years till I'm done. Like you mentioned earlier, I've dabbled in all kinds of things. I enjoy writing. I do a lot of writing for police publications. I like podcasts like this just because they're long form conversations where your words aren't cut and edited and made to sound a certain way. It's just me and you chatting, which we need more of in the world. And like you said earlier, I've dabbled in some television stuff, helped out with On Patrol Live, which is a really cool show that shows all aspects of our profession, from not just the exciting, but also the mundane, also the comedic. I mean, there's so much stuff you run into in police work that's just absolutely hilarious, and a lot of times the public doesn't get to see that stuff. And so that's kind of what I've enjoyed, my man. And I'm starting to ponder, the next chapter, because I've got, like I said, 2 or 3 years left. So what's the next chapter look like? We're starting to explore that. So that was actually fun, man. Thanks for making me lay that out. I don't talk about all that a lot. That's all right.
And that's part of what we do on the show, is when we talk about humanizing the badge and letting people explain who they are, because sometimes when you actually say everything you've done in your life, you're like, oh man, this has actually been pretty fulfilling.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah.
we don't recognize, because we're going so fast every day,
Right.
that we don't have time to slow down and say, oh, I've had
That's
3
right.
kids. I've been married for 20 years.
Yeah.
I've been in patrol. I've never wrote a seatbelt ticket, but I
Yeah.
have done a lot of other things.
That's right.
Like I've been
Yeah.
on SWAT. Like I have good friends. I have a good community. Like it's good for even ourselves to take that moment to self-reflect on how
That's right.
positive the life we have. Because once again, like I know when you're not on this podcast, whatever you're dealing with as a captain, especially on the south side of North Carolina, or Greensboro, excuse me, it's not going to be probably as fun as relaxing. So this is that opportunity to kind of, take a
Yeah.
little bit of a break, and hopefully the radio don't go off and nobody calls your phone, because that's all possible, because
That's right.
as a captain over 70 people and however many citizens in that area, it's tough.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. And you know, the cool thing is, and I tell folks a lot, I've been fortunate where, you know, the job, the calling, the occupation, the profession, I think this is the coolest job. I mean, I truly think this is the best job. And people come to our profession for, you know, out of, you know, various circuitous routes. Mine was you know, I didn't aspire to this job as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. I always wanted to be a cop. I truly got into this job but out of a curiosity. You know, you see movies, you say, hey, that looks pretty neat. When I was graduating from college, I had a couple quasi plans, nothing cemented, and I said, let me check this out. Let me try out policing, and I'll do it until it's not fun. And then we'll do something else. And that was again 25 years ago. And I think this is the best job. It's so much fun. I mean, if you poll the average, you know, say 100 civilians out here, and you ask them, have you ever, you know, in any way thought about, fantasized about, considered being a cop? Almost everybody has, because this is the absolute coolest job. Here's the best example. Here's the best example. Everybody wants this job. And I tell the young folks here in the district all the time, like, you guys get paid to do what people will buy $15 movie tickets this weekend to go watch. And you get to do it. And you get paid like a substantial salary to do it. Here's the best example. Ice-T wrote a song called Cop Killer in the 80s. Cop Killer was the reason that the parental advisory label was ever created. He had to go before the United States Senate and effectively defend his free speech right to write a song about killing cops. He made millions of dollars off of that record, right? Fast forward 30 years, same guy has made probably, I would say, 50 times that playing a detective on TV. Everybody wants this job, right? Isn't that interesting? And so, you know, this is truly the coolest job. And that's why I say, you know, coming here it's fun. I still love this job. I was out, you know, I'm a relatively speaking old guy. I'm 47 and a half American years old. But I was out in a foot chase 2 weeks ago, chasing a robbery suspect. This is the best job. And so it is pretty neat, you know, when you think about how quickly it goes, the old adage of, you know, time flies when you're having fun. It truly is the case. You know, and my kids like hearing these stories, which is pretty neat. But yeah, this is pretty much the best of the best, in my opinion.
It's funny you say how fun of a career it was. And I was a street cop at one point. I wore a polyester uniform similar to yours.
Yep.
But this was back from 2005 to 2009 when I worked in Tallahassee for their police department. And you're right. Some of the things I did as a street cop, like I think about doing nowadays, but then I'm like, I'm not going to be running foot pursuits anymore in 2 weeks. Like you were, like, not saying I can't because I work out, I sprint, I do all this stuff, but I think, man, my recovery time is so much different from when I was 20 to 21 to now I'm 38. Like, it's just a little bit different. And there's a few more things that can go wrong.
That's right.
And there's a few more people relying on me now, kind of like you with the family of five, including yourself. Like, it's just different.
Yeah, no, and you're right. And that equation, you know, that equation is always changing in your life. I remember, you know, just the way that you assess and manage like personal risk, right? I remember when our oldest child was just getting into kindergarten or so. That's when I started thinking, okay, you know, like you just said, there's higher stakes now to my own safety. Now, you got to be careful with that, right? We talk a lot about, you know, when I first got in the profession, you would hear the old adage passed around that, you know, the most important thing is that we all go home tonight after, you know, after shift. And, you know, as a young guy, you know, I digested that, and there's some value in that for sure. You know, being squared away on your tactics, being squared away on your physical fitness and your mindset, your mental preparation. But, you know, if you take that, you know, if you take that to heart truly as a cop in the United States in 2024, that cannot be the highest priority, right? You know, your house is getting broken into right now and your wife's inside, and the cop that shows up, think about this, has the highest priority that he and his pals go home safe. That's not who you want responding to that call. So it's there's always a dichotomy, right? We you know, of course we want to take care of ourselves, of course. Of course, we want to care for our pals on the shift, on the squad. Of course, we want to give ourselves all the advantages we can. But, you know, think about running into an active shooter, a school shooting situation. You know, you saw the recent heroes, those young men that ran into the school in Nashville last year. Those guys did not have almost any hesitation that I can note at all. Rex Engelbert and the other guy, I don't recall his name, but absolute monstrous heroes, right? Ran into that building, and they did not have a primary thought of it's most important that me and my pals go home safe. They had the primary mission of the mission, right? Caring for the folks, dealing with the problem, right? In that case, lethally, and saving lives. And so it's tough, right? I mean, we're always we're always weighing and managing that. But I think the key is this, and this is tough. This is a tough sale, particularly when you're talking to a room of 22-year-olds in the academy, young, bright-eyed, impressionable, is that there are things in life worse than dying. And that's a philosophically challenging thing to say. But you think about, and I won't utter his name here because I don't think it deserves it. But the SRO at Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, whether you do something, something will happen as a result, and whether you don't do something, something will happen as a result, and you alone have to live with those consequences. And I think there are things like he's probably experiencing now that are worse than dying, worse than being gone from the earth. And that's knowing that you were in a position to make a difference, right? And you chose not to. I don't know that you can psychologically recover from that in this lifetime. So yeah, it makes for a pregnant conversation for sure. But yeah, good, worth thinking about.
Yeah, with some of the things you've been able to do up to this point in your career, I had this on my mind. I wasn't too sure if I was going to ask it because you said it early on as you were providing like your work history and stuff like that. And I feel like I'm in the same boat as you with my answer, but I kind of want to see your view on it. You said one of the things you didn't do was crimes against children throughout your career.
Yep.
I never did that either. For me personally, I could never do it. Like I just even when I didn't have a son, I have a son now. Like I just couldn't do it. So for you, if you were ever, I guess, and people don't know this about law enforcement, sometimes you're voluntold to do things, so to speak. Like, how do you think like you would have been able to manage that kind of stress? Because being SWAT and being tactical, that's one thing, intelligence, all that stuff. But I think that's a whole nother beast for anybody that can do that for even 6 months. So obviously you probably have some people that have fallen and probably come to you, but how do you think you would have managed something like that, like dealing with crimes against children?
Yeah, it leads into a couple different conversations. One, I intentionally chose a large agency to work for because you have, dozens and dozens of different opportunities, which means you can also track your strengths, right? Mercifully, human beings are all different. Can you imagine how boring the world would be if we were all the same, right? So the cool thing is that you get a decent sized conglomeration of folks together, you will have different strengths, different proclivities. A good example, my sister, for instance, she worked she was effectively a baby labor nurse for 10 years. And she was great at it, compassionate, cool under stress, could handle all the gore. Me, on the other hand, if I had to do that, if the survival of the human race was based on me delivering all the kids, it just wouldn't happen. I would just be passed out all the time, every shift, falling out, smelling salts. So all that to say, but she thrives in that environment. So, what I push a lot of times around here is what we've always called like strengths-based assignments, strengths-based leadership, where, we're not trying to make everybody well-rounded and the same. We want to take your strengths and drive forward, right? So I knew about myself early on that traffic stuff, all of that world, which I got a lot of friends that do that. It serves great purposes. That just never held my attention. Further, very specifically, like dealing with crimes and suspects who had assaulted and hurt kids, I knew just from knowing myself, right? Socrates said famously, know thyself, super important, that I don't think I could do that and keep a healthy psyche. I managed at one point part of the fraud division, and underneath the fraud division in our agency were the guys that handled all of the electronic search warrants. So they would be tasked with, ripping computers and hard drives and building the electronics, evidence-wise cases against child pornographers and that kind of thing. And I even told those guys, when I come back here, I don't even want to see that stuff. Like, I just know I can't see that stuff. There are guys and gals that do that work, thankfully, masterfully. And I still think, that specifically, like that job really will hit at your psyche a certain way. But I'm grateful that there's men and women that can do that work and can digest it and can continue marching towards justice to lock up those, absolute dirtbags. But I just knew I couldn't do it. So if your question is, how would I manage it? I don't know, pal. I mean, I intentionally never did that on purpose because I'm careful about, you got to be careful about what you let in. to your filters, your eyes and your ears. And I can manage a lot of things. I don't think I could handle that. So if I got faced with that, I don't know. That'd be a real decision point. I mean, I may be looking at if it was work here and work this kind of crime or go elsewhere. My soul is worth more than that. I probably would have marched somewhere else. Gratefully, I was never faced with that. But that's why I tell folks all the time early on, you get into patrol, you start dabbling in, putting your toe in the pool of the different aspects of our profession. Start realizing what you're drawn to, what you're gifted at, and chase that doggedly. Don't waste time trying to make yourself like everybody else. Like, you take your proclivities and you chase hard after those. So, yeah, that me and you are similar in that. It sounds like that would have been very tough.
Out of everything you said, like just framing it, one of the things that I really took from that was don't do something that you're not good at.
Yep.
Don't just take a position maybe because it can get me the next promotion. And
Right.
we find a lot of people, and it's not good to do it in this industry where out in the academy it's high stress. Like
Yep.
by the time you go to the field training officer program, you have an FTO, that's stressful. But now I've seen, and I know you experience this as well. Like people take some of these promotions because they're like, well, if I could, it's open, it gets me off of patrol, and then I could become a
Yeah.
sergeant after.
Right.
So sometimes not every good promotion is a good one. Or if you didn't get that promotion, there's probably a good reason why. Because, like you said, thank goodness, like me, I was in my career of doing different types of law enforcement. I've never been faced with that directly either. I've had some like one-offs every once in a while, but I've never been forced to deal with crimes against children because
Yes.
I wouldn't be good. I like
Yeah.
I have family members, like you said, friends that are they are so good. Like I'm just like, I don't think Michael Laitler can handle this. Like Michael Laitler can handle a lot. There's
Yeah.
crimes against children, some of the things that, and then I have friends that have told me about. I'm like, yeah, you don't have to tell me the story. You don't,
Yeah.
you don't have to tell me what you saw today. You don't,
Right.
I'm not going to be any help to you.
Yeah. I don't need to hear that. That's right. Yeah.
I support you. I don't
Right.
want to be involved in it.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And that's okay. You know what? So two things that'll kind of sabotage that. I think that's the proper worldview. I think that's the proper professional approach. But what gets in the way a lot of times is either ego, right? Which is,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I mean, if there's anything more toxic, I don't know what it is. But the ego that makes people say, well, I can do any job. Like I'm going to chase after that, and they've tasked me to do that. I'm so flattered by that invitation. Yeah, I'm going to take it and not consider whether I'm built for it or not. And I'm going to charge into it, and then you end up, walking into a meat grinder. Or the other side is like you alluded to, chasing promotions. You got to be very. I tell young folks all the time, be like your soul is extremely valuable. Be very wise what you trade it for, right? And if you trade it for bad alliances and allegiances, or bad assignments, and really yielding to flattery and taking these different jobs, it's going to feel like work. This job doesn't have to feel like work. This job's a great adventure. And you move around every 4 to 5 years, you can have 6 careers in one career effectively. But you got to be wise about that. So I have absolutely no problem. And I try to empower the young folks. Look, if there's an assignment and it's not for you, it's not built for you, say no. It's okay. Further, no is a complete sentence. Like you don't have to explain anything. Just no, no, thank you. Onward. Like, let me find what I'm good at. Right. And again, everybody's mercifully different. We don't need well-rounded cops. We need well-rounded teams. I've always said that, and I think that's important. When I first was coming up, particularly in the early 2000s, that was kind of the push. Like, let's you make sergeant and above. We want cops to be well-rounded. We want our executive officers to be well-rounded. We want to send them to all these same schools, run them through all the same battery of assignments. So the same cop that's proficient at tactics needs to also be proficient at budget and needs to be proficient at recruiting, and that's kind of nuts. I mean, to spend a lot of time doing that, you will end up suppressing a lot of your strengths and your gifting when you could be building well-rounded teams and taking the solid tactical folks and driving them towards being even more tactical, and taking the solid budget-minded cops and making them even sharper, and building those teams together that are well-rounded because they have experts and ballers of all different disciplines. And I just think that's super important. I got to be careful. I always want to hedge all this by, and this, I think this is important, Michael. I've been wrong today. Like I might be wrong about all this. Like I tell people that all the time. I've been wrong today a couple times already, and I could be totally wrong. But I think you should hold strong opinions loosely, and that's kind of where I'm at. That's you got to offer your opinion. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, because that's you've you've been in this world for a couple of decades, to say
Yep.
the least. A couple of years. You've been here since past lunchtime, so you should have some opinion, and that's how you grow. But I'm going to transition a little bit because as I was thinking about all the stuff you have going on and just people in general, I always want to make sure I emphasize things that are going on beyond what
Yes.
we see physically, as far as like the uniform and everything else. And
Good.
do you watch college basketball by any chance?
Oh, I'm a Tar Heel. I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, so I'm a Tar Heel. Tried
Well,
and
I'm
true.
sure there's some Tar Heels. I'm a FSU Seminole, so we're both ACC. Well, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
ACC for now. We'll see what happens next year.
that's right.
Um, but do you know Dan Hurley with
Yeah, yeah,
UConn? Have you heard of
yep,
his name? Well, obviously you
yep,
had. I mean, if you're watching Tar Heels, you know how
yep,
good they are. And so I bring him up because as I thought about you and your marriage over 20 years, I think about how important it is to have a level of respect for your spouse. And
yep,
recently, he was given the opportunity to go to the Los Angeles Lakers,
yes,
which is in the NBA, to be their head coach.
yep,
And one of the rumors is that his wife didn't want to leave. She
sure,
didn't want to have that kind of lifestyle change. So, what I'm looking at relating it to is in 20 years of being married to the wife you have,
yep,
how important has it been to maintain that relationship with her, especially
yep.
with everything you dealt with over the last 25 years in law enforcement?
Yeah. So, I'll say this: it's extremely challenging to this day, and that's not a bad thing. Anything worth anything is worth effort, right? I mean, anything that comes easily is cheap, right? It's not worth anything. So, my wife, we met and were married when I had been a cop just a few years. So we effectively grew up together in this profession anyway, which was
Mm-hmm.
helpful. We had to learn early on. I've got friends whose friends, I have friends, for instance, who like their wives don't want to know anything that goes on at work because it gives them anxiety. And I totally understand that. With my wife, she's a little different. She likes to know a lot of the things. Further, she's always liked to know personally the guys and gals I work with. Anytime I like on the SWAT team, she knew those guys. On the bike team, she knew those folks, right? Because it helped her, in the middle of the night when she would have some anxiety or whatever would pop up, it would help her to know, well, I know these folks. I know how proficient and squared away they are. They're out there working alongside Kory. They're going to be fine. They're going to win. They've got the right mindset. They're going to care for each other. So learning that dynamic early on was super important. I'll tell you, and I tell the young folks this a lot, especially the ones that are newly getting married. Learning to balance professional and personal life it's a never-ending challenge, and it's especially so with our profession because it's so easy to take this job on, specifically this job, as your deepest identity, right? I mean, young guys and gals, they get the new shield, they get a blue line tattoo, they've got the stickers on their car, they wear tactical gear everywhere, they're wearing a fanny pack in public, and so and
Yeah.
pretty, it's easy because this job is, like we've been saying, is super heroic, it's super noble, it's unlike any other, and what you have to be very careful of is taking that on as your deepest identity. When in actuality, like right now, if I'm listing out my priorities in our house are God primarily, and then my relationship with my bride, and then my relationship with my kids in that order. And then everything else, my family, friends, job, all of that, right? And it's easy. And over the years, man, I have not done it well for sure. There's been times when I've swapped some of those priorities around and have suffered and had to patch up things. And so, telling young folks, particularly, anytime I have young folks here, announcing their engagement or getting married, I'll give them the 2 cents if they ask for it. I'm not one to give unsolicited advice, but when they ask, because I'm the old man, I'll tell them, care for that thing, right? Tend your home like a garden, right? I heard this metaphor not long ago. One of my friends officiated a wedding, and he gave that metaphor. He said, your marriage is like a garden, right? If left unattended, it's going to fall apart. It's going to not thrive.
Mm.
Weeds are going to come in. Animals are going to come in. But you have to care for it. You have to push back all the nonsense, and you have to be, continually looking after it, caring for it, predicting, giving it what it needs. Um, So, it's a challenge, particularly with shift work. I mean, there's a lot to this job that makes thriving in marriage challenging. And again, be very clear. I'm not holding myself up as a bastion that I've always done this well. But we're celebrating just, a couple months ago, 20 years, and we're actually planning a skydiving trip together just to commemorate something epic, because 20 years is epic. That's a big deal. And so I think just, like anything, intentionally caring for that spouse at home is super important, particularly when they don't work alongside you in the job. I would like to think I've always done it well, but I think you have to bang off the guardrails to learn what's best. Our first couple of years of marriage were very challenging, like learning to live alongside and work alongside another human being. That's a miraculous thing anyway. And then enjoying it and thriving. It's important, it's valorous, but it's not easy. And, honestly, I don't think you want it to be, because then you don't value it as much. But I don't, again, please God, I don't want people to hear me say that I got it figured out, but that's what I've learned at this stage.
Well, it's called wisdom. Like you learn through experience, you evaluate. Like you said, I think it's important for anybody to understand that any relationship to grow. Like,
Yeah.
well, I know we focus on spouse, but with your mother, your father, your siblings, your
Yep.
children,
That's right.
you have to have all of that to continue on, because just going
Yeah.
to your 9 to 5 in a uniform, so to
Yeah.
speak. I know law enforcement is 24 hours a day, but I mean, let's just say an 8 hour, 10 hour shift, however you want to look at it, or even 12 hours.
Yeah.
You have to make sure your home is good too, because whatever's going on at home will carry to
Yeah.
the field, and vice versa.
100%.
Whatever's going on in the field is going to carry home. I mean, I don't know if you heard this back in the day, because I started my law enforcement journey in 2005.
Yep.
You did yours in 99. I heard so much. When you get home, turn it off. When
Yeah.
you come out, like, and I was just like, okay, okay. And then what I realized is that
Yeah.
it was creating more burnout. It was actually making, because I was like, you just can't turn it off, especially
Yeah.
if you go to any kind of call, like especially early on, like you said, you guys were married early as far as like into your law enforcement career too. So you didn't even know yourself yet. 5 years into, some people are still a rookie.
Right.
So you're still trying to figure out what your destination is going to be. So
That's right.
establishing the relationships and understanding what works and doesn't work for you is important,
Yeah.
but also the people that you go home to,
Yeah.
because whatever happened at work, they're dealing with too. Like, they weren't on the front line when it happened, but your emotions carry over. So
Yeah.
when you've had those long days, those long calls, how do you shut that down, or how do you make it
Yeah.
bearable for your family once you get there? Like, do you have certain techniques you use or methods?
Yeah. So, this, like that last conversation we were just having, it's important to note that everybody's different, right? Everybody's got their own thing. I'll tell you a couple things that I've learned early on were not helpful. One, like I tend to like I enjoy multitasking. For instance, like when I ran, I had my daily run this morning, and I was listening to a podcast. I'm mowing the grass. I listen to a podcast or try to learn a new language on audio, whatever I'm into. Um, I would, even driving home from work, I would have some kind of input in the car, right? For instance, just in audio, right? Listening to a podcast, trying to learn something. And I realized, if I have that problem solving, mindset hat on all the way home to my driveway from already solving problems at work all day, it's impossible to turn it off on that 15-meter walk into my house, right? And so learning to create some kind of margin, whatever that looks like, from the time that you check off, right? Take the gear off, decompress, take a couple breaths. If you've got a 5-minute drive home or a 45-minute drive home, maybe taking that time to just breathe and listen, right? And shut off the input is helpful for me. I've got about a 15-minute drive home now from work, and that's actually about perfect for me. We used to live closer to where I was assigned, and the drive was too short. And I would, I'd drive around the block, or I'd sit in my driveway even after
I
getting
like
home
that.
for just a few minutes, just breathe, think of a couple things where I'm grateful to be here. This is, what this day entailed, before I hastily and too abruptly switch hats and go into my most important relationships with my wife and with our kids. And so, like, that's important, I think, to create some kind of margin. Is that popular? No. Being still, being quiet is the least popular, thing you can bring up in the United States, right? Because everybody loves, whether it's the metaphor of the TikTok videos and more input, swipe and swipe. I want to see more. I want to hear more. But honestly, it's like stillness, quietness, In my life, prayer, super important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is your thing that will center you and bring you back to like, just quietness where your mind can have space. The other one that's most important for me is, we mentioned it earlier, is just working out. I've got a small tribe of friends now at this point after 25 years. I mean, my tribe of trusted soul friends is very small. And I protect those guys doggedly. They know almost everything about me. We share challenges and hallelujahs, but we also share values. And one of our shared values is physical fitness, not for to look a certain way, not to look any way when you go to the beach. Who cares about that? But to be physically fit to do this job. But also, I think a lot. I like to be able to physically do anything my kids want to do. Like, I think that's a good goal for a 47-year-old. Do I want to parkour off the Empire State Building? No, that's not valuable to me.
Yeah.
But when my kids say, "Hey, Dad, you want to sprint?" Yes, I want to sprint right now. You want to play basketball at the playground with some high schoolers and men? Yeah, I want to do that. You want to go, rafting down the river? Yes. We want to ride bikes. Anything they want to do, I want to be able to do that. But primarily, working out, cleansing your mind, sweating daily, like that's coming every day. It just helps to clean your mind, to clean your mind out. I've always done the workout for me is always first thing in the morning, and that's symbolically, metaphorically, because I know honestly, physically, anything else probably that's going to come today is not going to be as hard as what I just did, and so I'm in good shape. Further, I metaphorically slayed the lion this morning. I mean, the lion was waiting for me, and I won again. And so you have to have those routines. I like to read, which again, I know sounds like an idea from Little House on the Prairie, but I'm a big reader. I read about a book a week typically, and I share a lot of that clips and wisdom, with our folks here in the district and with my pals. That also makes me sit still. Anything that makes you sit still and just ponder I think, is undervalued and extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, it's interesting because now obviously I'm an avid reader. I got a book out and everything, but early on in my life, in my 20s, especially my early times by law enforcement, I never really did the actual sitting down and just reading, or I never did the mindfulness techniques like some of the ones that you talked about doing just on your way home. Maybe something's still pressing on your mind.
Yeah.
Stop the car, maybe take another block around and just allow it to fest the settle in, because once you get to where you're going, it's game on. It's no, oh, well, we're doing this. No, no. Hey, once you get home, the kids are, if anybody that has had any kind of small child, whether it's their own or whatnot, if a kid's under 10, as soon as you walk through that door, it's game on.
You gotta be ready.
They don't care what you went through today. They don't care if you went to 6 homicides. They don't care if you went to 27 foot pursuits.
That's right.
You pull someone out from a burning building.
Yep.
They just know when mom and dad come home,
it's on.
it is on. Like, hey, come in here, play with me. We're gonna play. We're gonna watch this movie. We're gonna make popcorn. I'm gonna sit on you. It's something. So you're right. Having those techniques, and I tell people, one, kids do change your perspective of life. They do give you an appreciation for trying to live longer. Because now you're like, I'm just not here for me or my spouse or my parents. Now I'm here for somebody I chose to bring into the world.
That's right.
So when you start looking at how to kind of manage that, I love the fact that you were able, you continuously do that, and you're able to showcase that with a tribe. Because I tell you people now, like my son, we talk about, he's only 11, but we talk about like friends, and he's changing schools to a different middle school this year. And I said, hey, when you get older, I'm gonna tell you right now, what this whole having 20 and 30 friends go down to like 3.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, You're right. You're right.
And that might be and that might be lucky. Some people may just have one, like, because especially like for like me, for example, I've lived in Florida, Louisiana, now Texas, so I've been able to move around a little bit. But your friends just change, and the close ones will follow you, at least like mentally and like communication wise. But I said, you realize that even if you live somewhere for, let's say, 25 years, friends come and go out your life, and your true tribe of people that have the same values as you, which I love you use that word, aren't going to be that big as you think. Like they may be good for like a barbecue, or maybe, hey, let's bring our kids together. That might be fine, but your true friends that are like you, that are there to boost you up through prayer, build you up through exercising, build you up to just, hey, get your head out your butt kind of situations. Those are very small. So it's good that you've been able to do all of that to kind of balance that level of stress that you get while having that uniform on.
Yeah, and we tell our kids the same thing. It's good to have, it's fine. It's great. It's fine, perfectly healthy to have a bunch of friends, right? That are acquaintances and you play ball together. But a lot of them kids are going to be losers and heathens. And, shockingly enough, there are losers in life because they choose the wrong path. And
Mm-hmm.
so the most important decisions you're going to make are that small tribe and then who your spouse is in that order. Because that's where you'll face that. You mentioned earlier we run a young man mentoring program here. It's a nonprofit that we built about 3 or 4 years ago now called Runwell. And we take first responders, primarily cops, a small group of us, 12 or 15 of us, into a local high school for the duration of a school year. And we rub elbows with young men in high school, ninth to 12th grade. And we meet with them once a week, committed all through the school year. We work out with them hard. We drive them in progressively harder workouts through the year. We build them physically. We teach through a curriculum on one aspect weekly of manhood, whether that's responsibility or toxic passivity or strength or courage or love. And we share a meal together each week. And then the culmination of the year is a big race. Like this year, we took them to a 10K Spartan race, and these young men smashed it. Some of these kids that could not run a mile the beginning of the school year on city streets smashed that 10K. But what was even cooler is every year we see their character grow. We see them get a bigger worldview. They come to understand that something is expected of me in the world. Like I have something that only I can offer the world. And they don't hear that anywhere else, but they hear it from us, and it's important. And so, yeah, choosing that tribe starts at an early age when you discover what your values are. But yeah, there's no decisions bigger than that, who you partner with. And then that's from all of from the Bible to all the great religions. They say if something effectively, can you lay down with a pig and not get muddy? No. Can you rub elbows with the
Yeah.
great and not get greater? Also, no. So yeah, choose wisely and then protect doggedly that small tribe group. Yeah.
So with all the stuff you have going on, Kory, if someone was looking for you, where would they find you?
Not online. That's for sure.
You did
I
say
have
that on TV though, but
Yeah. So I have I have zero social media footprint in the
Mhm.
world. I use LinkedIn now, particularly because I'm looking at, again, my next chapter in a couple of years. And I use that to network with folks like you just to have great conversations like this. But I don't do any of the other stuff. I don't have the attention span for it. I wouldn't be good at it. And so I can be contacted. The best way is email. I mean, honestly, I've got a Gmail. My Gmail account, funnily enough, it's confidential flowers at Gmail, which I built because I was like, I want just a regular, normal, quiet email account. And then somebody mentioned, man, that sounds like an escort service or something. And look, it's not. It's confidential flowers at Gmail. That's me. And then I've got my city email for all professional conversations. But I've always said, like, if you know me, like if you know all three of my names and you know my kids, then you know how to contact me. And if you don't, that's okay too. But I try to be, and I don't know again, I've been wrong today, but I think a lot of times we as Americans are too accessible. I don't think that's good for the soul. It's not good for my soul. And so, it makes it helpful when people want to criticize you too. If you have a criticism of me, text me. And if you can't text me, then that means your criticism is probably also not valid, and I'm okay with that. Like I can live with that. So yeah, I like email. I can be contacted through the city of Greensboro too if it's professional stuff. That one is Stephen with a V .flowers at greensboro-nc.gov. That's it. That
So
was a
if you guys
boring
are,
answer.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, that was
no,
a
no,
boring answer, Michael.
no, it's
But there
no,
you
no,
go.
no, no. That wasn't a boring answer, Kory. That's a good, clear, and very wise answer because it suits you, and
Yep,
that's all that matters.
that's
What
it.
works for you, and that's what I once again the reason why I promote the podcast, whether it's through LinkedIn,
Yep,
Instagram, through Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, I do that because it's about you as a person. Like
yep,
if you can't live in your own skin, then you're
that's
not going
it.
to be able to help anybody out. That's when we face all these issues. So
That's
hey,
right.
if you're looking for Kory, guys, LinkedIn
There
is,
you go.
is the way to go. That would be the way I would say, because especially if you're on a professional network. I mean, if you're just trying to reach out and just talk about them, that you could just keep your opinions to yourself. But if you're trying to boost him up and enhance his life and enhance yours,
Yep.
reach out to him through that way. So that's perfect. So as we close out, any final words?
No, man, like I said, I book in this conversation with the same thing. I appreciate what you're doing, Michael. The young folks getting into this profession, there's so many barriers now. 2020 was a rough year. We were as a whole just so criticized, a lot of times ignorantly. There's so much negative that people are just feel very free to spout about these young men and women who are noble and courageous and valorous, right? And so what you're doing, just highlighting the human beings behind this shield and bringing, proper, healthy stories to the forefront, man, I just appreciate it. So as always, I really have valued our conversation. I really appreciate the invite, my man. That's what I got.
Perfect. And that's perfect, man. For those that are listening and watching and however you're tuning in, maybe you're on your own run and you're trying to figure out how to understand what goes on behind the uniform. This is what these conversations are about. My goal is to highlight people that are in the profession, have ever worked in a profession or retired, because they are the best testaments of what's going on in reality. And if they're here to talk to us, that's an opportunity for you to think about, okay, whatever you're struggling with, whether it's something personal with mental wellness, whether it's something with just leadership, maybe it's just with your family. There's ways to combat some of that and overcome it, because we are testimonies of that. So when I do some of my keynote presentations or I coach people, whether it's as a speaker or not, I tell them, hey, there's people out there that are trying to make a difference. Look for them, subscribe to them however you can, reach out to them on platforms like LinkedIn, and realize that there's always more hope, and continue that development, because it's never too late to get better. It's never too late to make a difference. I mean, I was talking to my mom, she's in her mid 60s, and she's like, you know what? I think I want to go back to school just to finish my bachelor's degree. I'm like, cool, why not? Like, just keep going. Why are we not just keep going? And that's the goal of what we're always trying to do. And that's one of my goals of this podcast, is show that we're just regular people with regular problems. The only thing that makes some of us different is that we're in a very high stress environment. Then now we have two layers to deal with: work stress, which is real, because I mean, you never know what you're walking into. And then we have the personal stress as well, that to me is equally as important. So once again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're actually on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, just know that people are out there that appreciate you, and we appreciate you being here. If you guys ever need anything from either of us, you can get Kory on LinkedIn. Obviously, you can find me. I'm a little bit more accessible than him. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, a little bit of Facebook. X, I can't figure out. It's just whooping me every time. But make sure you subscribe to the podcast, like it, rate it. But we're always looking for you guys to kind of build and grow. So, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you guys ever need anything, please reach out. But y'all have a great day.
You've been listening to the LEO First Podcast. Michael has been in law enforcement since 2005. He's worked for 3 law enforcement agencies in 3 different states. He's a professional speaker who travels the country teaching about leadership development and self-awareness. And he's the author of a book called Greatness Beyond the Badge: The 3 Key Principles for Self-Awareness. It's Michael's passion to bring law enforcement members' stories to the front, so you get the real and raw take. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Michael on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Michael Laidler, on Twitter at Michael A. Laidler, on Facebook at Michael Laidler Leadership. Send an email to michael@michaellaidler.com and hit the website at michaellaidler.com. See you next time on the LEO First Podcast.
Like that, I'm going to be leaving a note. Find vehicle, advising and remove it.